pastor here at Fairmount Friends Church. Just want to share a thought with you this morning and two thoughts out of the gate to see if we would agree. That life is best lived when Jesus is Lord. And life is most blessed when we live under the law of God. If we agree with those two statements, Jesus being Lord and living under the law of God, life will go well for us. However, if we say, no, we don't want Jesus as Lord, we'll be the Lord of our lives. And no, we don't want the law of God. We would prefer to create our own law that has a lot more personal preference than just what God wants. We're asking for the blessing of God to depart from our lives. I firmly believe that we are at a crossroads here in America. And as the book of the Bible in Jeremiah says, look, you're standing at a crossroad. And we need to be those that return to the ancient ways and to the ancient paths of God. And to come into alignment with what God's heart is for us and for his people. I really believe that Jesus is asking for another level of surrender, especially in America today. We need Jesus, the preeminent one, to be firmly planted on his throne, reigning and ruling on our hearts and on our minds. That we would think with the mind of God. That we would not lean so strong for personal preference or to make choices that are outside of the law of God. But we would say, God, what is your heart? What are the guidelines that you have put toward our life? And that's the best way to live under the canopy of the blessing of God. Paul Tripp, he has this idea called functional atheism. Basically, the thought is that I can live my life thinking that I'm living this Christian life. I attend church. I show up on Sunday. I even serve. I'll even make a potluck dinner for the church. I feel good about my Christianity. However, whenever it goes to living out my faith in the streets, I get a little bit more wishy-washy and I actually get more seduced into modern ideology. Thinking whatever's going on in the day, I need to be more sensitive to people than I really am sensitive to God's law and his ways. I want to encourage us as a church that we be so mindful of Jesus, that he would be the one that reigns and rules. He would be the king above all kings, above all senators, governors, mayors, presidents, local town officials, that Jesus would reign and rule in our communities. And when we go to make choices, we make the choices that are saturated in a God-centered perspective. Recently, I saw my pastor, Ron Johnson, talking about the freedom of choice and how we have that in America. And what a blessing it is to have so many choices and options readily at our fingertips. However, as we've exalted choice, sometimes it means that we devalue the law of God. I would rather do what I want to do than to listen to what God has commanded me to do. I'll tell you this, choices are only good if we're choosing from the ideas of God. If they're ideas that are outside of God, or if they're coming from man who's bent toward sin, we don't have good options. Actually, in Genesis chapter 6, verse 5, it says that man's heart was only evil all of the time. Only evil all of the time. That doesn't help set us up for making good choices. So why don't we lean on the law of God, saying, God, your ways are higher than our ways. Your thoughts are higher than our thoughts. As the heavens are above the earth, so are your thoughts and your ways higher than ours. Isaiah 55, 8 and 9. Recently, I heard this illustration from one of my friends, Andrew Ming. And he's from Taiwan, but he loves Chinese buffets here in America. And he's sharing this experience whenever he goes to a Chinese buffet. He's like, man, I got all these options. And I want that egg roll. And I want this, chicken and rice. You never take the pizza at a Chinese restaurant. And so you're like, no, I don't want this. No, I don't want that. And also what you can quickly do is move straight on to dessert. I just wonder if there's sometimes, maybe in the church today, if we don't like all of the veggies, all of the nutrients, all of the richness of God, which is the Lordship of Jesus Christ, which is repenting of our sin, which is saying there is a right and there is a wrong. And if I live right, I'll have a blessed life. And if I live in sin, that I'll have the judgment of God on my life. This is Christianity. It's not just dessert where we come in and we get the sweet stuff and just a bunch of pie and cake. Christianity is a submission to the Lordship of Jesus Christ, believing that He is the King of my life. And I can't just make choices on personal preference to where I move into areas of sin. I must lean on the law of God. And He says, don't do this. My response should be, yes, Lord. The word Lord means sovereign owner. And He's the owner of my life. The Apostle Paul said it this way. He said, I've been freed from sin. And now in my freedom, I choose to be a slave to righteousness. Joshua, in chapter 24, he says this. He says, if you don't find it desirable to follow God, then you need to choose this day which God you will serve. Maybe it's the God of this area. Perhaps it's the God of this area. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Psalm 33, verse 12 says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. He chose them as His inheritance. So I want to encourage us, let's live under the guidance of God, because I believe that's the safest place on earth, is a lifestyle of sacrificial obedience to the Lordship of Jesus Christ. We're asking the preeminent one to reign over our nation, over our town, over our homes, and over our hearts. That no longer would I want to just do what I want to do. I would say, God, what is it in your heart that you would have me do? And I will submit my life to that. So I'm cheering for you this week. We want to trust God in all of our ways, not just leaning on our own understanding, but in all of our ways, we want to acknowledge Him. And He'll be the one that will direct our paths. Let's go get Him this week.